Once upon a time, there was a kingdom called the Green Kingdom. The king is dead. The one who inherited the kingdom was a princess. The princess' name was Solana, a princess who wore a green dress, had hair as black as coal, eyes that any other man could look deeply into and drown in her gaze. This day had been the king's funeral. She sat deeply sunk by the king's coffin for a last farewell. Soon the king's closest man came into the castle chapel. He asked her to come with him. "Your Highness, the wizard Roj wants to speak to you." "I understand," replied the princess and stood up. They walked through the corridors and halls of the castle. She was watched by archers, knights, and soldiers. In the kingdom, trolls, goblins, monsters, giants, and other evil creatures ravage. They want the dynasty to which the royal house belongs to end. The kingdom is considered to belong to the powers of evil by a strangely cruel and evil duke in the mountains, Duke Ulf. The evil ones live in large caves, the caves of darkness. The population calls the haunt of evil in the kingdom. Once in the castle library, Princess Solana went in alone. There sat an old man with a book, looking up at her where she stood in the doorway. A fireplace gave the room light. Dancing shadows on the castle walls gave the wizard a melodramatic undertone where he sat. "Solana, my dear girl, your father asked me to guide you in what the kingdom faces, a fight against evil for the freedom of your people." "But Roj, can I handle this?" The wizard nodded. "Learning wisdom and knowledge, you may use your sharp mind." The wizard smiled. The princess sat down at a table where there was a book. A candle was lit. The wizard began to read aloud from a book, a reading that lasted many hours. The knights stood on the castle walls and watched over the fields around the castle to see if dangers were approaching. As the sun was setting, the last scouts returned to the castle to report if they had seen trolls or other enemies of the kingdom. Inside the walls, the blacksmith was still working, the hammer meeting the red-hot steel, shaping another sword for the kingdom's fight against evil. In the castle courtyard, like many other times when darkness had fallen, people had gathered, jesters entertained the people who were having fun. They drank and ate well. The kingdom will soon have a queen. The princess has not been crowned yet, but the people still celebrated it. They knew that the kingdom still lives on. The green banners in the towers beat in the wind, in time with the jesters' pipes and bells. People danced, laughed, and the castle lived despite the constant threat from evil outside the walls. Meanwhile, the wizard walks through the dark forest. He carries a torch. With a determined gaze, he continues his journey deeper into the forest. The day is dawning. Knights patrol the streets. People have woken up and are preparing for a new day in the kingdom.
The princess is sitting reading with the women of the castle. Maidens. She's just finished her morning bath and breakfast. Princess Solana gets up and goes out into the fresh air on the castle streets. There she meets the wizard Roj, who looks decidedly serious. "You can come with me," Solana said the wizard. The princess looked at him. She chose to be silent, followed the wizard. They walked through the castle. The walk ended with them after a while being outside the walls in the forest. "Where are we going?" wondered the princess. You'll see. There are people you need help from," answered the wizard. They arrived at a small house in the forest. They stood still. The wizard took a few slow steps, knocked on the door. Once inside, the princess and the wizard were seated at a table. An older gray-haired woman looked at the princess. "This is Anna Maria, a wise woman," said the wizard. "Wise," said the older woman briefly, looking at the wizard. "Last time we met, you called me crazy," the woman said, and gave the wizard a pat on the cheek. His cheeks turned a little redder. The woman sat quietly, caught her breath, and said with her eyes fixed on the princess's, "Don't be fooled by temptation. The man your heart belongs to will not be seen in the mirror your father gave you." "What mirror?" the princess wondered. "Have you forgotten?" The woman leaned forward over the table. The princess sat for a while. She thought, "I remember." Princess Solana answered shortly, "Take that mirror to you. Keep it close. You need it." The older woman said and smiled. They sat for a while in the cabin. They talked and drank herbal tea. In the meantime, the evil duke's troops of trolls, the black horse people, half horse and half troll goblins, evil dwarves and other monsters began to wander through the forest. The earth beneath their feet and hooves was torn up. Branches snapped. Snorting trolls advanced with evil glances. At noon, the princess and the wizard were back at the castle, standing in the castle courtyard, inspecting the castle's knights and soldiers. The princess was impressed by the men who wanted to defend the kingdom against evil with great courage. "Your men are ready for battle," said the wizard. "My men should really be with their families, not have to fight against evil," said the princess in a sad voice. The wizard gave Princess Solana a light pat on the shoulder. The soldiers' and knights' armor gleamed in the sun, the green cloaks symbolizing the kingdom's flourishing life and love of nature. Green flags flutter in the towers, and the sun is shining. The princess enters the castle at the same time as she hears a terrible sound. It is a horn that is heard outside the walls. The princess rushes through the castle, runs up the stone stairs. After a while, she comes to a window.
A window with a view of the field below the castle. There she sees how Duke Ulf's forces have gathered. A moment later, in the library, the princess is sitting in front of a map. It shows the kingdom, roads, forests, and lakes. The wizard points to the map. "Solana, there at this field, there we must gather the forces. The rest must keep the evil away from coming inside the walls." Princess Solana felt her hands become damp with sweat. She felt her heart beat faster. The troops had gathered at the place the wizard Roj had pointed to. The princess stood ready for the fight against evil. The smell of the troll spread, the stench that was felt in the air smelled of evil, sudden death and pure evil. The princess held her nose. "Enjoy the thought that the smell will disappear when we defeat them," said the wizard. "Time passes, the battlefield is filling up from both sides." Suddenly a long rumble sounded. It was dragons, and now the troops of evil began to move towards the knights and soldiers. Thousands of roars were heard, and the battle had begun. The fight was going on between good and evil. Time passed, men fell, trolls fought and were killed by silvery swords. Arrows flew in the air. The sound of the arrows was heard like a swarm of wasps. The princess fought bravely. The wizard's spells kept the dragons at bay. The fight continued until early morning, when the last troll of the evil troops retreated. The wizard found the princess. He said, "We won today, but tomorrow the evil duke will gather new troops." The princess smiled crookedly. Her eyes were tired. She walked quietly, slowly back towards the castle. She dropped the sword she had been carrying to the ground.